Welcome back, everybody. We are here for another of your questions about work, and today is a good fundamental one. For those of you who are new, I'm Roy, and Min and I are both startup investors in the future of work.
And we are back on day 140. Hope everybody enjoyed your President's Day and
Family Day in Canada, I learned, which I think actually that's a much better thing to celebrate. Since 1990, Family Day, yet again, Canada.
Always one-upping the rest of us. Okay, so today I think this is it's that time of year as well. And so, what is a way to do a performance review?
That week even for some of us. So what is the purpose of a performance review? The purpose is to check in with somebody on a regular basis, and some companies do it quarterly even. Most do it at least annually, to sit down with a person and tell them how they're doing. And I find that there are two focus areas for it. One is an assessment of how they're doing, and the other is their growth and where they can go from there. And the two can blend together. But if you are new to leading people and you're like, what do I do now? Maybe you've been on the receiving end of getting some performance reviews and you know what works. By the way, how to receive a performance review is another good question for us for another day. Ideally, your company has some structure into which you fit. They have some guidelines, maybe even a form to fill in. Maybe they even use software. But for the purpose of this question, I'm going to assume you're starting from scratch, that you're either creating that system because you're in a small organization or you don't have anything to go off of. My own experience is until I was a leader of teams, I think I received 2 performance reviews in a dozen years. And so the idea that this happens regularly is kind of a myth, but it is a really good thing. So to me, the core idea is how do you connect that individual's performance to what the organization as a whole needs? And that could mean that what you do is you set up a few values that are consistent across your team, different areas that you work on. It could mean that you have goals. Maybe you have a goal setting process, like OKRs is one popular goal setting process. And what you do is you try to describe how their performance relates to some model of how you would like them to perform. And I remember when I was at McKinsey, that an incredible grid, here are all our areas, and here's what it means to be just doing fine, and here's what it means to be doing great, with a phrase for each one. Most companies are not that organized. Both your assessment of their performance and where they should go should be relative to that ideal that you can communicate with them about how things ought to be going. And what I'd say is that less is more in the writing. You do want to write things down, and I've found that a few sentences and bullets works much better than a long letter where it's unclear what to prioritize. You can collect input from others, and we did a question on another day about 360 reviews. And then the last thing I just say is this can often be really nerve-wracking for the person on the other side. They're not sure what to expect. And so making sure you try to, as much as possible, not think of yourself as being in delivery mode, but being in listening and conversation mode, and just being aware of what they may be feeling and going through, giving them repeated opportunities to voice things, because it's a nice chance for you to hear, of course, what's on their mind too, and how they want to grow. And so you try to make that central to it. I've tried to make performance reviews two-way feedback conversations, and it's never really worked for me. I find that it's best to separate it out. I think emotionally it's just really different to be the giver versus the getter, or it just may overload one conversation. And ideally, everything you share in the performance review, the person's heard before, because you're giving them feedback pretty frequently. We could talk about that on another day too, of how do I give people feedback frequently? What are the triggers for giving people feedback? But that's the general thing. Connect to the broader organization, try to invent some structure that does that, be lightweight in what you write, but try to be really specific, and just try to be attuned to the feelings of the other person.
Yeah, and the two things I will underscore from what you said was that there shouldn't be that many surprises, if any, right? That's not helpful for, it's not usually the time and place to give somebody a surprise and then leave them really unmoored a little bit. And then the other one was, oh gosh, it just slipped my mind.
Well, maybe think on it for a second, because I just want to elaborate on something there, which is oftentimes a performance review can come associated with a person on the receiving end believing there's some big decision happening. Will they get promoted or something like that? Some companies do promotions around those performance review cycles. And what I just say is, whatever you think the other person might be stressing about, waiting to deliver that in the review is generally a bad sign. Sometimes you have to reveal some money stuff in the review because it's just not ready beforehand. So some of it may be inevitable, but the more you can let the air out and release the pressure, the better. And if there's a big elephant in the room kind of topic coming up, best to allow the elephant to flee the room before you enter it.
Right. Oh, and I just remembered specific examples I think are really helpful, because sometimes, especially for somebody on the receiving end of receiving feedback during a review, to hear like, you're doing great, or you are like, you could be better at this, and just having almost like the bullet points of, you know, this is an example of when you did this, this is how I perceived it, you know, I think does go a long way in terms of encouraging behavior change.
Absolutely. I mean, sorry to interrupt you. The tactic of specificity as a way to have people remember things is so important. And what I do is I actually have a text file on my computer that is my running review file. And then whenever something happens where I'm like, oh, that's important enough, I may want to note it in that person's review, I drop it into that text file. And then, you know, two-thirds of the stuff ends up not making it into the review. But one of the hardest things is memory. Is you just don't remember the things that have happened. And in fact, when I was a CEO, one of the people on my team, Sabri Tosin, who now runs a big part of the technology at LinkedIn, developed a system which was continuous performance reviews, where you could just leave something anytime for somebody. And then when it came time for the annual meeting, you just hit Control-P and printed it all out. And that was, I think, a great software solution for it. But in the absence of that, .txt is an excellent software innovation.
Old school. Love that. Okay, well, that was today's This Is Not Advice. Roy and I'll be back. Roy will be back tomorrow. We have a special guest with us, and we'll be actually tackling a couple like productivity questions. And so that seems to be a popular topic. So join us tomorrow. And if you have other questions you want us to answer, drop them on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you're seeing this.
And if you have a guest you want to see, let us know.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. To be continued. Thanks, Matt.